Hello, and welcome to Cheers, That's One Woman's Opinion. Today we'll be looking at Cheers Season 1, Episode 6. The episode is called Any Friend of Diane's. This episode was directed by James Burrows. It was written by Glenn Charles, Les Charles, and James Burrows. The guest cast, Mason McCalman as Daryl Stable. McCalman died in 2005 after a series of strokes. Julia Duffy as Rebecca Prout, and John Ratzenberger as Cliff Clavin. So here's our summary. The phone rings and Coach asks Cliff to answer it. I've never been in a business now. I could be wrong. So if anybody has seen this, let me know. But I've never seen a business that has the customers answer the phone. So that was kind of weird. I mean, I get that he's there all the time, and there are times when Norm has actually covered the entire bar when people have left. But it just seems strange to have somebody working at the bar answer it. Seems like they would. Well, I don't know when answering machines came out. Singing. I know Sam at one point has an answering machine. But that was a thought there. Anyway, Cliff yells for Carla, saying it's one of her kids on the phone. Carla doesn't want to answer, but she takes the phone and says, "What is it?" She then exclaims, "Serafina's where?" And then adds, "We'll cut her down." And they explain, Carla explains on the phone, she must be up on the roof as a antenna because Carla says, "I don't care if it helps the reception." So I assume that they've got her up there acting as a antenna. Carla tells the child on the phone, "Any more problems with you tonight and you're adopted." And then she gives them a random number from the phone book and a random name. She tells Cliff that it's a long shot, but she had to try. And I also noticed that at this point, Carla's not as mean to Cliff as she becomes later. I don't know if it's because Diane's there and she'd rather be mean to Diane, so she's only a little mean to Cliff, or because it seems like after later on she's going to be a lot meaner. Though some of the episodes with Diane she's mean, but at this point she's not quite as mean to Cliff as I've seen her in the later ones. Where everybody knows your name plays. Diane comes in cheerfully. Sam tells her she sounds like she had a nice day off, and Diane tells him that it was so nice she's not sure she wants to share it. But Diane, she can't not talk, so she shares it and says that she went to New Hampshire with a guy named David from the anthropology department, and she says that they stayed in a cabin where John Adams once slept. And Sam tells her, "Yeah, a lot of guys sign the registry that way." Sam tells her that on his day off, he went sailing with a woman named Taffy up at Marblehead. I'm assuming Taffy is a nickname, but even as a nickname, it's a very strange name for a person to have, man or a woman. Obviously, it's a woman because it's Sam, but still, very strange name. Carla says that she loves sailing, and after she saw the movie Ordinary People, she's been trying to get her children interested in it. Now, I looked this up on IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, because I thought I'd seen Ordinary People, but I must not have. Maybe I've just heard of it so much that I thought I have. But so I looked it up in the trivia sections that they have for IMDb, because this is something I didn't know, and this is what I read. Carla says she's been trying to get her kids interested in sailing ever since she saw Ordinary People, which came out in 1980. The movie, released 2 years prior to this episode, features the disintegration of a family after one son dies in a sailing accident, and another who was involved in the accident tries to commit suicide. So that was the reference if you didn't know what she was talking about, because I didn't and had to look it up. Norm comes in and tells Sam he's bringing someone from his company. He tells the gang they don't know him because he doesn't want his boss to think that he's a barfly. He then asks him not to call him Norm. Coach responds, "Okay, Norm." Now, this is a trope that I've seen in a lot of TV shows. where somebody says, don't do that, and the person says, okay, and then immediately does it. A woman comes in looking for Diane Chambers. Her name is Rebecca Prout. Coach tells her Diane is upstairs and she'll be back in a minute. Rebecca sits at the table and waits. Diane comes down and sees Rebecca. She looks shocked. Then she comes the rest of the way down and says, Rebecca? And I thought of this when Diane comes down, she's like looking through the trees, and that's how she sees Rebecca. Does she do this every time she goes up to Melville? Like, does she just randomly spy on the bar to see if there's something she needs to know or avoid? Um, it was just kind of weird the way that she did that. They hug and Diane tries to act like she is at the bar for research. Rebecca tells her that she knows Diane works there because Diane's mom told her. And she explains that her mom, Diane's mom, took her head out of the oven long enough to answer the question. Makes me look forward to when Diane's mother does appear later in season 1. Cliff tells Norm that he doesn't need to kiss up to his boss. Norm says that it's worth it in accounting because he loves numbers. They argue over who has the better job. Diane and Rebecca are talking and laughing. Rebecca suddenly starts to sob. Diane asks if something is wrong. I laughed at this line. Shelley Long's delivery is great, but what made me laugh is I cry pretty easily. I'm a pretty emotional person. And it's very frustrating when you're crying and somebody says, is something wrong? Duh. Obviously, if I'm crying and I was happy 2 seconds ago, yeah, something happened. So that line always frustrates me. But it makes me laugh at the same time. But when I hear it in real life, it frustrates me. Anyway, Rebecca tells her that she and Elliot broke up. Diane tells her that there will be others, and at least she has her job. Rebecca says she used to find comfort in translating Russian poetry, but not anymore. She tells Diane she wants to find a man. She says her man should be peasant stock, tall, dark, strong, hairy arms, but most importantly, he should be an unintellectual. One-word sentences. She asks Diane if she knows anyone like that, and Diane quickly says no. And of course, we all know somebody like that from the show that's in the bar. Cliff tells Norm that he doesn't need to kiss up to his. Oh, I'm sorry about that part already. Sam comes out of his office. He tries to open a bottle and yells, damn. Rebecca says hi and asks if he comes there often. Sam says almost every day since he works there. I thought it was interesting that he said because he works there. He doesn't mention at all that he owns the place. She points out his arms. He thinks like Sam's arms are hairy. And Sam says, yeah, I get a lot of compliments because they go all the way down to my hands. Diane comes down from Melville's, where she was getting change, and rushes over to them and leads Rebecca to a table again. Carla comes from the back of the bar with a drink order. Rebecca tells Diane that Sam is the guy she was looking for. Diane says, who? The gay guy with a war wound? But Rebecca's not fooled and asks Diane if she's interested. But Diane says she's not, so Rebecca decides to go for it. Now, I'm actually surprised. I mean, Diane does say at one point in another episode that she praises truth above all else. It's the one with the padded bra. We'll get to that in another day. I don't want to give it all away. Guess I might have already done that. Anyway, but still, I think it would have been smart for Diane at this point to say, oh, yeah, I like that guy, to keep Rebecca away. Of course, I understand if she did do that, there would be no episode because the whole episode revolves around Rebecca getting Sam. So Diane takes their glasses over to the bar. She tells Sam her friend is vulnerable. She asks him to say no to whatever Rebecca asks. And you can always predict what's going to come next. Rebecca comes over and asks to be excused. Diane heads to the back room. Rebecca asks Sam, would you object to joining me in my hotel for an afternoon of wild passion? Sam says, no, loud enough so that Diane can hear. Diane smiles. He asks Rebecca her name and she asks if it matters, and Sam again says, no. Then he and Rebecca leave together. Carla tells Diane that Sam and her friends have been gone for 2 hours. Diane corrects her and says, "It's only been 1 hour and 53 minutes." This is another line that made me laugh as it reminds me of myself, especially when I was younger. Like if my parents said at 8 o'clock something's going to happen, and at 7:59 they'd be like, "It's time" or whatever. I'd be like, "No, no, we have a minute. It's 7:59, not 8 o'clock." I was very particular about times. Norm comes in with his boss, Mr. Stable. Now, in the on IMDb, when I look up the guest cast, it says his name is Daryl Stable. I don't remember hearing his actual first name anywhere, so I don't know if it's mentioned or if it's just in the script and they got him that. But apparently his name is Daryl, but he always calls him Mr. Stable because it's his boss. Coach starts to yell, "Norm!" But remembers Norm said what Norm said about not calling him Norm and turns it into a song. No, no, no. I can't do it like Coach did, but you get the idea. Norm orders the drinks. He orders a Perrier, but decides to get a beer when his boss orders one. He tells Coach to hold him to one beer for the night. And I laugh because when at first he says hold me to one before he says for the night, and Coach says at a time, and he's like no for the whole night. So Norm drinks his beer in one gulp. He's like, and it's gone. And his boss looks totally amazed by that. Sam returns and goes into his office. Diane quickly follows. Mr. Sable tells Norm he doesn't respect men who can't control their drinking, and Norm agrees. Diane berates Sam for going with Rebecca. Sam says they are all adults, and Diane says she's not a prude, and then immediately cannot say the word sex. She says, "I'm not a prude about that stuff." She asks if he was proud of what he did. Sam replies, "I don't kiss and tell." Diane replies, "Oh, the pig has developed scruples." I think the writers on the show like the word scruples. And this is the only place I think I've ever actually heard the word scruples. And it's in this episode, and I know of at least one others in the Rebecca part of the series, in the later episodes. He talks about scruples. So I think the writers like that word. Sam then tells her that nothing happened, but Diane doesn't believe him. Sorry, I don't know what it is. He swears he is telling the truth, and Diane says that Rebecca must have come to her senses. Sam says no, he stopped it. He said that Rebecca never stops talking and is incredibly boring. Diane tells him that decency finally won out. Sam states again that Rebecca is boring, but Diane explains unconsciously you were sensitive to her suffering. Sam says maybe he'll never look at another woman as a mere sex object again. And then he looks at Diane and says, now scratch that thought. And Diane exits the office. Mr. Stable decides to have another beer. Norm runs to the bar and orders more beer, but Coach says no. So Norm says, "Okay, one beer for my friend. He'll have a pitcher." And of course, Coach happily obliges him. Rebecca comes in upset. She asks if you have to believe in God to become a nun, and Diane tells her it helps. Rebecca says that Sam found her utterly repulsive and climbed out the window. Diane returns to the office to talk to Sam again. I mean, picturing in your mind how we know about Sam, and especially if you've seen the entire series, and I'm not just watching this for the first time, Sam's known as a bait hound. He pretty much never says no to anyone. He only has three rules, which we'll find out later, which is not married. They can't be married, comatose. I forgot the other one. Married, comatose, or underage. Rebecca's not any of these things, and yet he still climbs out the window. Rebecca has to be pretty bad. And I tell you, it's very hard in this episode talking about Rebecca and not referring to our Rebecca, Rebecca Howe. Feels weird that it's not her. But she's coming, guys. I like both Diane and Rebecca, but I'm slightly more in favor of Rebecca on Cheers. But I think it's okay to like both. I do. I just slightly a little bit more than her. And the reason, as I've explained before, I started watching the show because Kirstie Alley is one of my favorite actresses. So logic says I would like her better. So Norm is downing beer from the pitcher, one mug after another. He's just pouring, drinking. And Mr. Stable's just talking about his life. Diane tells Sam he is a pig. Sam is confused because he doesn't understand how he became a pig again when he hasn't even left the office. But Diane explains that Rebecca's in the bar. Sam tries to hide, and she says, "No, you need to do something to restore Rebecca's confidence." She calls Rebecca into the office. Sam tells Rebecca he thought there was a fire. And this also was interesting because in the Rebecca Howe episodes of Cheers, there's an episode where Sam acts like there's a fire to get Rebecca out of a restaurant. So twice he uses the fire thing with somebody named Rebecca. This one's to protect himself, um, to not look like a jerk when he ran out on Rebecca Pruitt. The other one's actually to protect Rebecca from something else, which we'll get to when we get to that. Then he says he was seeing someone else. Rebecca says that he's making excuses. Diane says Sam is seeing her, but they had a tiff. I've never heard anybody besides Diane use the word tiff in America. This is definitely a Diane word. She says Sam wanted to make her jealous, but in the end couldn't cheat. Rebecca's surprised. Sam says he likes a woman who does exactly what a man tells her to do. He then asks Diane to tie his shoes. Diane ties them extra tightly. Rebecca leaves, and Sam and Diane start fighting and fall onto the couch. I was going to talk about the fight scene here. I think I'm going to save that for the finale episode of season 1, the final episode, and I'll discuss more about what they're fighting. Sam says, "Oh, I did that." Rebecca walks back in to get her sweater. She tells them, "That's the kind of passion I was hoping I'd find." Diane tells her he'll find it, and Rebecca leaves again as the credits are coming up. So I gave this episode 3.5 out of 5 beer nuts. The best part of this episode to me was the very last scene. And the B plot with Norm just seemed totally pointless. I mean, we don't know how it ends up with the boss, and all we know is that Norm drinks beer, and then Norm doesn't drink beer, and then Norm gets a pitcher because he tricks Coach. But it didn't seem like necessary. No, I didn't care for that. I gave the MVP. This was hard, but I gave the MVP to Ted Danson. I was torn between Ted and Shelley, and I had to give it. I would decided to go with Ted Danson instead of Shelley Long because of that final scene. That and when he says no, and he tricks Diane to thinking he's doing exactly what she wants. Those two things. My favorite line: Rebecca tells Coach she is looking for a Diane Chambers, and Coach says, "Ah, you're in luck. We have a Diane Chambers." And actually, that whole scene, there's actually more dialogue to it, and the whole scene is hilarious. Because Coach misunderstands everything she says. Great. And my runner-up favorite line is also the first Normism I mentioned. Norm enters the bar, and Coach says, "How's life treating you, Norm?" And Norm says, "Like he caught me in bed with his wife." Now, the Charles brothers and James Burrows have all talked about how the hardest part for doing the show, for writing the show, has been coming up with these Normisms. Because the first one was so good back in the beginning, first episode, that it was so good that it set the standard, and then they had to keep coming up every single time Norm entered the bar with another cool thing or Normism. Here's a little known fact. Julia Duffy, who played Rebecca, was considered for the role of Diane Chambers. She is best known for playing Stephanie on the sitcom Newhart. So my questions for you, dear listeners, is what do you think of Rebecca Prout? If you like this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, it's being shown right now on YouTube, and you can also listen to it on audio on Podbean. Eventually, it'll go to more places, get a bigger audience, but that's where we're starting for now. And you can join the Facebook group, Cheers. That's one woman's opinion. And you can also like us on Instagram at Cheers One Woman's Opinion Podcast. And as always, you can email us with questions or comments at cheersonewomanpodcast@gmail.com. The next episode is going to be in 2 weeks, which will be on April 24th, as I'm taking off Holy Week next week, which is between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. For those of you who may not know what that is. So I'll be back on April 24th with the next episode, where we will be looking at season 1, episode 7, Friends, Romans, and Accountants. And that's one woman's opinion. Thank you.